Hi everyone, today I'm going to talk about Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was a great man, even if he had many weaknesses. He was born in 1955 and adopted by Jobs a few months later. He was like a prankster to other people in his class in the school. He liked playing pranks with another classmate. Once he created a poster saying that tomorrow is a bring your pet to school day, and then they could bring pets to school. And everybody in class believed him, and then they brought their pets to school. Great. And the teacher was so angry that she was jumping around. There was another time when he lit firecrackers under the teacher's desk. The teacher was so scared that she was like, "Oh, I can't, let me go." For that, Steve was very ashamed of himself. It finally changed at primary 4 when he got a better teacher. The teacher encouraged his interest in math and numerous other subjects as well. With Steve Jobs later reconciled. My life would have been worse if it wasn't for her. I may have gone to jail if not for her. Then he went to secondary school. There he met Steve Wozniak, the later co-founder of Apple. They met each other because of a computer club. At first, the computer club, it was complicated. Okay. They were in the same computer club. They were both interested in electronics. And Woz was like slightly bigger than Steve. Well, they made many inventions together. The first of which was the Blue Box, a device made to take phone calls secretly for free. However, it did make many jokes because of that, because you could call anybody with it. Once they actually called the Vatican City with it. But it also got them in a little bit of trouble. Finally, in April Fool's Day in 1976, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and another guy called Ronald, I forgot, founded Apple. Steve Jobs and Woz each got 45% of the stocks, while that Ronald guy got 10% of it. But Ronald resigned from Apple in the 11th day when it was founded, because he thought the other Steve and Woz didn't know anything about founding a company. The first customers of Apple were the Byte Shop, BYTE. The shop's owner was very interested in the Apple One, the first product of Apple. The Apple One was very weird. It didn't come with a monitor. It didn't come with a mouse. It didn't even come with a keyboard. It's basically just a circuit with some checks inside it. Yeah, it's very weird. It's very different from the computers at now. But at that time, it was very normal, okay? Because people could always plug it in their televisions, and it would serve as a display, right? Ha ha ha! Of course, if they even have a television. After the Apple One, Steve Jobs introduced the Apple II with the help of Woz. The Apple II was more like the modern Apple, the normal computers. It came with a keyboard, a case, a monitor. People could use it once they take it out of the box, literally. P.S. After wiring it to a plug, of course. right? After that, the Apple II became the most best-selling product of Apple. Probably because it's the only product of Apple. And Steve kept hiring new talents. But he made a dangerous mistake by hiring John Sculley. John Sculley was the head of the Coca-Cola company. And Steve wanted him because he was like, he had many talents. He knew how to create a company, how to manage a company. But after John Sculley came to Apple, John and Steve found their interests bond in other ways. Because John Sculley wanted to have the biggest profits, but Steve wanted the products to be as cheap as possible, to be as good as possible. He even had a sale after selling the computers. The users could go back to Apple to upgrade their computers for free. Chronos. But it was the most effective way to win customers. Okay. But in 1985, stuff came to a downside when John Sculley told the board of directors to kick Steve Jobs out of Apple. Not exactly kick him, but you know what I mean. He was stripped of almost all his power, and he only had a name. He didn't even have real power. You know, Steve liked to control people, but he didn't like to be controlled by other people. And his temper was awful. He was like, what you did was so terrible. I never wanted to see that again. But after a little while, he just say, hey, this idea is great. And then make other people seem like he was the one who originated with the idea. He was so selfish. Okay. But at least he encouraged creativeness, which was better than other companies such as Google or Microsoft, at that time at least. After leaving Apple, Steve founded Next, a company that focused on making operating systems and software for computers. But the Next computers were expensive. Nobody wanted to buy them. Who would want $100,000 for a computer? Nobody. And anyway, most people don't buy computers from Apple anyway, or Next. Mostly they brought computers from IBM or Microsoft, which was way more worth it. After Next, Steve also founded Pixar. But remember Tin Toy and those other movies? Yeah, it's from Pixar. But at first, those companies weren't popular at all. In fact, they were terrible. Steve was so bad that he had to lay off most of the people working at those companies. It made him feel so bad that he could only look at his newborn son. Yeah. In 1997, the new CEO of Apple invited Steve back. He brought the operating system of Next because it was way better than and Windows. Yeah. Remember, John Sculley was kicked out of Apple in 1993, so John Sculley wasn't there anymore. After Steve went back to Apple and became the CEO soon after, he introduced the iMac. It was a powerful computer which came in a plastic case. But you may think, who wants plastic on their computers? It's useless. Nah, but at that time it was like the cutting edge material. But now the modern material is like metal or something like that. But no, at that time it's plastic. It was so user-friendly compared to many other computers. So it was much beloved by many other people. Oh, and Steve Jobs introduced Next, the operating system from Next, into Mac OS in 2001. So the Mac OS changed dramatically, and it was similar to the Mac OS today. The icons may look different, but the basic stuff like that zoom in and those red, yellow, and green buttons are pretty much the same. Oh, and one more thing. Steve Jobs became the permanent CEO of Apple in 2000. Before that, he claimed that he was only the temporary CEO, but then he had too much plans to change his mind. And also in 2001, Steve Jobs introduced the iPod. It was a handheld music player that a person could use as their MP3 player, only it's smaller. At first, there's only the 4 iPods: the iPod Classic, the iPod Mini, the iPod Nano, and the iPod Shuffle. Later, an iPod Touch model was added in 2007. Okay. And in 2006, Steve Jobs introduced the MacBook. There were 3 MacBooks at first: the regular MacBook, the MacBook Air, and the MacBook Pro. I won't talk too much about it, but I could say that the MacBook, the normal MacBook, was discontinued in 2011 and was finally discontinued on May of 2012 because of lack of sales and stuff like that. And the other 2 MacBooks are still in production today. And Steve Jobs introduced the most innovative product in the smartphone industry, the iPhone. I'm not exaggerating, but it's so good. It was so simple. You don't need a stylus or something like that. And you don't need a keyboard. Remember the BlueBerry? It went bankrupt in 2022. It basically changed the world. Without the iPhone, smartphone time will be released at least 5 years later. And in 2010, Steve Jobs introduced the iPad, which was his last gift to the world. The iPad was bigger than the iPhone and could be used to be watching videos and listening to music. The iPhones are pretty complicated, and I won't get too deep into it. But let's just say at first, the iPhone didn't even have a front-facing camera, the selfie camera. Only the iPhone 4 got it. Before that, no iPhones had it. Okay? And at that time, the front cameras was only 0.3 megapixels. Compared to now, 12 megapixels, it's so small. Like, only 0.05%, I guess. It's small. Okay. Steve Jobs died one day after the announcement of the iPhone 4S. Some people called it 4 Series for obvious reasons. But some people called it 4 Steve. Because Steve Jobs left the world one day after it was announced, and 5th of October 2011. Everybody over the world mourned Steve. People left bitten apples at the front of Steve's house, and millions of notes were left in the Apple stores. Everyone will remember Steve. He was a true person who changed the world, even if he was a tyrant, even if he was weird, even if he was abandoned from the very start. He did change the world with his mind and his RDF, his tool to persuading other people to do stuff. He could use it to tell anyone to do anything. He did change the world with an iPod, an Internet Explorer, and a location, stuff like that. An Internet Explorer, an iPod, and stuff like that. Yeah. And I think this is the end of my video. Goodbye.